Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 14. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, getting ready for the Pittsburgh Steelers preseason finale Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We love our afternoon games against the Detroit Lions, and then cut downs coming up here, Dave, on Tuesday, August 27th by 4 p.m. All rosters must be trimmed down to 53. So it is the calm before the storm team. Nothing really happening today from a media perspective. They're going through their walkthrough. We'll be on the road in Detroit and get ready for one last chance for these guys to state their case and one last chance for this offense to show a little bit of something to give some confidence heading into week one.
Yeah, happy Friday to you. Happy Friday to the listeners. An exciting next couple of days for sure upcoming here. And oh boy, 1 o'clock Eastern Time Saturday preseason game. That's 10 o'clock, right? 11, 12. Yeah, 10 o'clock out here in Las Vegas. So we really will be enjoying that instead of having to burn the midnight oil. We can plow through the TV tape by early evening, I'm assuming, which should be fun. Going to be a lot of backups, I think, in this one especially after halftime. It's going to get real thin real quick, and we'll go over who's likely in and who's likely out for this game. And yeah, you get cut down date early next week, so we're going to have to turn around in a hurry and get these 53-man roster predictions knocked out. So going to be a fun few days here. Looking forward to it.
Mike Tomlin speaking with the media for his Thursday, true press conference, not the short post-practice interview that he does during the summer, and said the starters will play. He said all who are healthy will play. Now, he said that last week, and some who were healthy did not play, and TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, but we'll see if those guys play. But more to the point, the bulk, really, everyone offensively who's healthy for the offense will play. Russell Wilson will make his second start. And so that's where things stand. I don't know how much Tomlin said about how long they'll go for. I think his implication was hopefully get these guys out of the game sooner than later. But I don't think he gave a kind of hard number the way he did last week, which he didn't stick to anyway, deservedly so, going 5 series instead of 4 with the starting offense against Buffalo. So we'll see Wilson, we'll see the starters, and hopefully we'll see different results.
Yeah, you nailed all of it right there. And TJ Watt was obviously interviewed on the sideline last week, and do you get a sense he wants to get out there at least a little bit and get lathered up? It feels like he would like to get a couple of snaps in before the regular season starts.
Yeah, I think so. That's basically, I think, what he told Missy Matthews, that hopefully I get to play a little bit against Detroit, get a little bit of rust off, and get some reps in before the games start counting. So I'm not opposed to giving TJ Watt, 2 series. That's it. No more than 2 series for TJ, but I'll give him 2.
Yeah, hopefully they're 3 and outs, and Cam Hayward as well, right? Get him moving around a little bit. I don't know if we'll get Alex Highsmith out there. Alex seemed to some of the media reports coming out saying that if this was a regular season game, he'd be out there. So we'll have to see whether or not that groin in, they hold him out as a precaution or not. He obviously hasn't seen any preseason snaps yet, so you would like to at least see a little bit of that. Especially when it comes to the defensive side of football. Once again, hard to say. You wouldn't think that these guys would play very long if they do play. And then on the offensive side of football, and man, it'd be nice to get Russell Wilson and those ones out there and march down the field on an 8 or 9, 10 play drive, put it in the end zone and call it a day, to have some positive stuff coming out of the preseason there. So yeah, we'll have to watch and see what they do offensively as far as playing time.
What would you do if you're Mike Tomlin? What would kind of be your general outline for this offense? Let's assume they don't march down the field because they haven't yet, and 10-play drive, put the ball in the end zone. Let's say it's they get a first down, they get a punt, 5-play, 6-play type of drive. What would be your interpretation of how the offense should be handled?
Man, I just want a feeling of some tangible positivity of some sort coming out of a 2 or 3. Obviously you get those guys in there for 3 drives. You're taken away from guys that you probably want to get a deeper look at during the game. But obviously you don't want to see the negativity amounts that we've seen in these first 2 games, the penalties, the sacks, the exchanges, those kind of things. I'd like to see a couple of explosive plays, maybe, or at least one of them here. No drops. Just if you can get a couple of series in and at least not have negativity involved in it like we've seen in these first 2 games, I think that would be a positive. What would I do? I would try to aim for 2 series, I think, out of Russell Wilson and company, but we'll see. But once again, if you go down, 12, 13 play drive, then pull them,
Agreed. So there's a bit of played by ear, a little bit of, how the offense does will impact how much they play, which was really the story last week. It's defensively, what would you do with the starters? To me, some guys need to play, but you're more apt to, I think, get those guys quicker rest than I would be the offense.
Yeah, I agree there. Yeah, I mean, just get them lathered up a little bit and get them out of there.
What else from Mike Tomlin from a health standpoint gave a couple of updates and a couple of non-updates. It sounds like Beanie Bishop Jr. will be good for this game. Mike Tomlin saying, quote, he'll be ready tomorrow or Saturday. I think he forgot when the game was, but his point being is that he'll play against Detroit, and so that's going to be critical for him. Did not offer an update on Peyton Wilson, but Wilson spoke with reporters and said he's cleared, and the fact he's speaking with reporters. If he was still in protocol, he would not be allowed. He would not be talking to reporters. So it sounds like Peyton Wilson should be good to go. I will say Pittsburgh has to have the quickest concussion protocol turnaround rates of the entire NFL, because it feels like every other team, if you get a concussion, you're out at least a week. In Pittsburgh, you're often coming back without missing a game. But putting that aside, he's cleared, and that's good for Wilson to get out there one more time before the games start counting.
Yeah, I'd like to see him get a good amount of snaps after obviously having his time cut short in that game last week. I'm not sure how much longer he would have been in that game anyway, the way, because he had registered a pretty decent amount of snaps, didn't he, before exiting. So, but he is still a rookie, and you still want to get those guys as many snaps, as much experience as possible out there. So, yeah, I expect to see him out there, and I don't know, 18, 20 snaps, something like that might be good for him before you start getting some of those backups in there. And as far as other injured guys, it doesn't sound like we're going to see Roman Wilson, the rookie wide receiver, in this one. And what else?
Tanu should not play, working for week 1, he's saying.
Jaylen Warren, probably not going to see him, even though it sounds like he's making good progress with that hamstring injury.
And it sounds like he's confident at least he'll play week 1. We can't take that to the bank. Players can be confident. Doctors can have disagreements with assessments of health and readiness, but it seems optimistic right now that Warren can get back for week 1, and of course still has 2 weeks to recover with that bye week where the old 4th preseason game once stood.
Right, exactly. Who else running a risk of not being in this game?
I'd have to check a list and think about some of our articles. I think that's a lot of the names. There could be something behind the scenes going on. Of course, we're not at practice anymore, so I can't keep you the daily log. We'll see if Jonathan Ward, with his hamstring injury he suffered last day of training camp, can get out there. I have no idea if he's going to be available or not, but that'd be big if he can suit up one more time.
Agreed.
What else from Mike Tomlin? He did say, Cordell Patterson will play. They're willing to give him a heavy workload if need be, and kind of more of a general point about just his status as a running back, less so about the status for this game. But Tomlin downplayed the need to give him kick return reps, despite this new dynamic kickoff and the changes. He was asked, Tomlin was, about will Patterson get some work on kick returns, and Tomlin said, quote, I don't know that's necessary. I think his resume this is a typo in the transcript here, is extended. Wow, that is a really bad typo here. I think his resume is extended as anybody's on the planet in that space. I apologize that it very bad typo here on the transcript from the team. And I might be more apt to see those that I know less about. Again, that's a component of balancing the 3 preseason game model with the 4 preseason game model. So Tomlin really downplaying the idea of Patterson getting kick return work in this one. I would like to see it. I think it's worth getting 1 kick return for your starting kick returner, the man you signed to be a kick returner under these new rules, but it doesn't seem like I'm going to get my wish.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, he could surprise us. Obviously, Mike Tomlin has said one thing before and gone the other way another time. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm with you. I'd like to see him return at least one of them.
It sounds like it'll be more John Rice Plumlee and some of the running backs, Michael P. Ryan, Ward if he's healthy, maybe Dejon Edwards, maybe somebody else. But we'll just have to wait and see and how many kickoff opportunities there'll even be in this game. Anything else from Tomlin he said that was notable?
Let me see here. He's not overly concerned he's not concerned about the criticism with Broderick Jones. We don't care about criticism. That's the world we live in. Corey Trice Jr., he talked about, the big thing for him with each passing rep. I see him just being more comfortable in terms of trusting his health. When you come off of a major injury like he has, that's a component of it as well. He's also a young guy, so he's got some growth things, and there's a lot of meat on that bone. He's covering a lot of ground, but there's a lot of ground to cover. So I would expect Corey Trice Jr. to have the opportunity to cover a lot of ground in this game. Probably play a heavy amount of snaps overall in this one, and he needs them. And I think the other interesting thing, when asked, as far as Beanie Bishop Jr., will he be ready? It sounds like they've kind of limited him still a little bit in practice, and why the question was posed to Mike Tomlin. Like you said, best to reduce his workload in an effort to see him, the best of him, and give him an opportunity to show his best in stadium. The follow-up question is if Beanie Bishop has shown him enough when healthy, and he says absolutely not.
Which is accurate. He is not. I thought he had a good camp. Didn't have the great camp that I think some people were trying to say that he was having. There was a lot more to show and prove, and you miss a whole game and you miss, a third of the preseason, which is so critical, obviously. So it's a huge game for Beanie Bishop. It's a huge game for Pittsburgh to try to get hopefully clarity at slot corner. It's still really up in the air. It's Bishop, it's Graham, could be Deshaun Elliott, who in at least some big nickel situations will be out there in the 3 safety package, probably dropping down quite a bit, but this slot position is still really undefined, and I'm not really convinced it'll be one guy handling it. It's not been one guy since Mike Hilton. It's been a committee. It's just a rundown guy. It's been Chandon Sullivan, Arthur Millette, and a pass down guy, Patrick Peterson, and Cam Sutton. So until Sutton returns in week 10, I think this thing will be pieced together pretty good, and it's hard to say really who's going to be doing that. It could be Bishop, could be Graham, could be Elliott, could be an outsider.
Yep, absolutely. And I think as we've talked through our 53-man roster predictions the other day, sure seems like it's trending like there might be an outsider in the cornerback room that could be on the way from whatever angle.
The difficulty is just getting that guy up to speed without a lot of reps and no in-stadium reps until the games start to matter. They tried that with Desmond King last year and kind of hoped that he could be something, and he had apparent trouble picking up the playbook and understanding things, and that didn't work out. So there's always a risk inherent with that. Did I ask you before? I think I asked you if you would bring back Patrick Peterson, right? Did I ask you
I wouldn't, but we'll see.
Okay. That is a guy that obviously knows the system and can come in right away, but obviously his skill set is declining, and he is certainly no longer an outside cornerback. So that's Mike Tomlin. Let's talk about this game just in our big picture view against Detroit here Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. If I had to make you choose one name, I know these are always kind of big questions, try to narrow down, but who needs this game the most against Detroit to secure the roster spot or secure their role on the team? If you had to pick one guy where you say this game matters more to him than any of the other 90 on the roster, who would it be?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. That is good. Who needs it the most?
I mean, there's a lot of guys that need it. We'll talk about more names, for last chance to state your case, roster battles. But if there's one guy to really, there's no
I
clear
would
answer.
Probably, there's no one clear answer. But if there's, Uh, I'll give you. How about Darius Rush?
There was one of the names in my head. Yeah, that's a guy because you have him on your roster. I have him off. I have an article today. Players that I would say are right outside the bubble. He's one of those guys.
Yeah, he's going to be an interesting one to watch. I am kind of. I mean, we know a lot about him already, but
do we?
No, I'm talking about Isaiah Loudermilk. One other guy I was going to add to the list here was Isaiah. My 1B might be you said crucial game, and a guy that maybe you could debate inside or outside the bubble at this point. No, we obviously don't know a lot about Darius Rush. Right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were going with somebody else. I got you.
Yeah. That's one for sure. Trying to think of who.
Jeremiah Moon might be my choice. That's a guy that seems behind Kyron Johnson, but if he's going to get a lot of playing time in this game, if they switch off kind of roles, he's got to shine.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if they might flip roles this week, because one of the most notable things come out of that second preseason game was a lopsided snaps that now Jeremiah Moon could have got nicked up for all we know,
Sure.
But it will be man, if it gets that lopsided again in this last preseason game, that's going to spell doom for Moon, I think, overall there. But yeah, I think those are, and it's funny, all three of them are on the defensive side of the football, right?
Right. And I think other names that could be good choices, Corey Trice, it still matters for Trice. I think his spot is more secure than the others, but finding out what you have in this guy, how confident are you in him being a top backup? What is his role in dime packages? Can he carve out snaps there? I think you just want to learn more and more about this guy since you lost him for his entire rookie season.
And what about coming off of a nice game and seems to have a good chance here, Des Fitzpatrick, who I think we both had in our last 53-man roster prediction.
Right, another guy that I think he's right on the bubble. I had him on my last roster prediction, like you said, you did as well. But if he doesn't have he's a guy that I feel like could make the initial 53 and then get replaced by a post-cut addition where they bring in a stronger special teamer. I made a list that went up this morning on the site. We'll talk about it in a couple minutes. So that's a guy that is still fighting for that spot offensively. Rodney Williams, the same boat. I think rookie Ryan Watts is also on the bubble. I know a lot of fans are pushing back on that and say he's going to make this team, and he could. And if he has a great game as a gunner, that's going to really help his chances. But I just wonder if he's a little too raw right now to grab that 53-man roster spot.
Good point.
So to my answer for that one singular name would be Jeremiah Moon, but there's a lot of guys obviously fighting for jobs and positioning on the roster right now.
All right. What about guys to watch here?
Yeah, I mean, aside from the ones we mentioned, just collectively, how does the offensive line block Broderick Jones? How does he respond after an abysmal performance against Buffalo? Imagine he's going to be getting a lot of right tackle work in this one. Could flip over to left tackle whenever the starters, Dan Moore and others come out. We'll have to see exactly how they handle the offensive line with some of the injuries they're dealing with right now. But all eyes will be on Broderick Jones and his response to a terrible last weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And, going to obviously keep an eye on him. Will Dylan Cook play some right tackle in this contest?
We'll see. We'll have to see how they handle the second team offensive line. He's played some right tackle. He played more once Fautanu went down after really being a left tackle throughout the first 2 weeks of training camp. But I mean, I know he can play right tackle. He played there in college. He played there a lot last summer. So it's not that he has to prove it, but getting snaps there is always helpful to round out your resume.
And I think one of the biggest things when it comes to the offensive line is what Zach Frazier exits this game. And we've noted this, had a couple of talks on it, since this last game, and obviously since the Herbig injury. What's going to be the rotation at backup center, and will that rotation include both Spencer Anderson and Mason McCormick getting snaps in there? And have they seen enough of Ryan McCollum, and do they know enough about Ryan McCollum at this point where maybe Ryan McCollum doesn't only see snaps at guard in this game?
That's what I would prefer. I mean, you got to have a second team offensive line, and McCormick and Anderson have mostly been playing guard, and Anderson some second team right tackle. But can you configure the O line in a way to make it work and give one of those guys, Anderson or McCormick, center snaps? I'd like to see it. I wish that we had a little more questions and answers from Tomlin about it, because I'm really interested in that backup spot. McCollum can play either guard spot, so can you flip Anderson and McCollum or McCormick? Sure, you can. You should be able to. It's one of the top things to watch for.
Right. And obviously, we've talked about, Anderson had more college snaps at center, way more than a guy like McCormick did. So we're going to be paying close attention to that.
Who would you guess is second team center, and who is more likely to see center action in this one, McCormick or Anderson?
I would think Anderson would be the first of those two into the game.
Okay, that's where I'm leaning, but I don't know. My only thought is, what if they have Anderson do something else because they need another tackle? They don't have another good option for that second team line or something like that. I wonder if that's going to be limiting him and maybe opens up a guy like McCormick to seeing some more center snaps.
Okay. I want to see both of them get snaps at center in this game.
Okay. So hopefully get enough snaps to evaluate. I think you should. If you play Frazier the first two drives, you probably play maybe, let's just say, Anderson the rest of the half, and maybe first drive of the third quarter, and then McCormick the rest of the game at center. Probably is the way you could go about doing it.
Okay.
All right. Anything else to watch for in terms of defensively besides the bubble guys? Anything to watch for with kind of the more secure rostered players?
I want to see more of Dean Lowry.
Me too. How secure is his spot? Is he at risk if he doesn't step up? Because I do like Loudermilk, and he has, I think, become steady against the run, not high level, but average to a bit above average against the run. Younger, cheaper, I think, overall. So that one, again, I repeat it, they're redundant. They're the same dude, Lowry and Loudermilk. So is it worth keeping both?
Yeah, going to be, look, are they going to keep 7 or are they going to keep 6?
It's a great question. They usually keep 6. They kept 7 last year. Leal at least is able to play different roles and hats, and is kind of a hybrid player at this point. He's not so much a true defensive lineman. So I wonder how they'll consider him in everything.
I agree.
Anyone else to look for in this one? Yeah, I think it's kind of the bulk of the names here defensively. Always watching more of Herbig, just watching his game grow, I think will be fun. I don't think Detroit's playing a lot of their guys in this one. That doesn't sound like. I know Penei Sewell got hurt. I assume he's not going to play in this one either, but I'd like to see him against some of those bigger Lions tackles.
There's not it's kind of off the cuff here. Not that it's a big deal whatsoever, but there's a bigger line, I think, in this preseason game. And I believe, let me just double check real quick. The Steelers are 6.5 point road favorites in this one. So they must be expecting Detroit to not take this one as serious as far as some starters go as the Steelers.
What's the line? 6.5?
Yeah, 6.5 Steelers in this one on the road. I mean, Once again, only degenerates like myself care about this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think they're going to rest all. I'm not sure if they're resting all their starters, but I know Hendon Hooker's going to start a quarterback. Obviously, there'll be no Jared Goff in this game. They got some guys hurt. I know Terry and Arnold, their first round pick, don't think he's going to play. No tackle. DJ Reader's been injured and trying to work his way back. They got a couple guys in the secondary elsewhere that are banged up, not going to play. So I think they're a little more injured right now. Detroit is, and really not worried about playing some of their starting key guys.
Yep.
All right, Dave, where to here? Anything else for this game? If not, I think we talked about an article I wrote this morning and we discussed this and have talked about it throughout the summer about losing Miles Boykin, James Pierre at gunner. You finally get a punter with a giant leg that Cameron Johnston has. And here's a crazy stat. From a gross average, and it was just preseason, sample sizes are small, but from a gross average, Cameron Johnston is averaging over 50 yards per punt in the preseason, but his net is about 36 yards per punt, which is a lower number net-wise than what Presley Harvin had last year. And so you're getting these really long returns that have been problematic. It was a bit better against Buffalo than Houston, but they still allowed a 31-yard return against the Bills. So can you get some coverage guys and special teamers to shore things up now that you actually have a punter who can really force these guys to cover and make some tackles in space? So I have a list here this morning of 8 names that are specialists that Pittsburgh could be looking at, should be monitoring once cutdowns come. And most are gunners. There's a couple that are not really true gunners, kind of more wings. There's a need for a wing on the punt team as well. I think the most interesting name on this list is Miles Boykin from the Giants. We're maybe bringing him back if he were to get cut by New York. We talked about that last episode. But if he makes the Giants, which seems to be more likely than not right now, the Giants seem to value his special teams value. I look at a guy like Zach McPherson from Philadelphia. He's a guy that seems to be on the outs there. Tore his Achilles last year, did not play, but the 2 years prior had a ton of gunner snaps, a lot of special teams work. That's a guy that I'm watching for if he gets cut.
With McPherson, I haven't watched anything on McPherson yet.
Yeah, I don't know if he'd be talented enough to be a number 3 corner right behind Porter and Jackson. He's played some defensively, but he could be that maybe number 4, number 5 corner to be that special teams, James Pierre-ish type of role. One guy that you had mentioned last night was on my list, funny enough, was Grant Dubose from Green Bay. The Packers have one of the deepest wide receiver cores in football. He's probably not going to make the team. He's got size. He's a Charlotte guy, and Pittsburgh loves their Charlotte men with Ty Smith and Ogunjobi and Welshoff. So he's only got 1 rep as a gunner this year in the preseason, but made it count, had a really good tackle. There's a clip in the article of him making a play. So that's a guy with some size that, could potentially be that number 5 type receiver.
Yeah, our own Tyler Wise, who handles stuff on Instagram and stuff like that for us, and obviously has done great film work for us before and draft work and went to the Senior Bowl and all. He's the one that first pointed out, at least that's the first one that I saw, I think, earlier this week, him point him out on Twitter, and pretty good blocker on offense as well, too.
Yeah, he's a little Boykin-like. He's got some size. He's 6'2", 201. I think it's a little bit smaller than Boykin, but he's well built. And I want to see what he does in this finale. Does he get more gunner work? Because it is literally just 1 snap. I think he's going to play 9 special team snaps in total. He was on the practice squad last year in Green Bay, so there isn't a ton of a resume there, but something to watch. I think the name that I'm really going to watch for, though, Dave, is Brandon Hill from the Houston Texans. He's got gunner work. 7th-round pick last year. He's the guy that recovered the Quez Watkins muff against Pittsburgh in the preseason. He picked off Kyle Allen to finish the game. He's local. He's Pitt Panther. He went to, I think, Central Catholic. He's got gunner work. It does not look like he's going to make the Texans roster. He's decently athletic. He could be that 5th safety and be a gunner and special teamer for the Steelers team. So I'm really watching Brandon Hill.
All right. That will be interesting. That's a great list that you put together for sure. And look, I still think that there's a good chance that we see 1 or 2 guys not currently on this roster end up on the 53-man roster.
Sure. I think wide receiver, obviously, still in play. I think corner is certainly in play. I assume somebody from the secondary to be a defensive back will be added from the outside. They need it. And I think they could add in the underrated position is a special teamer, a coverage guy, because the coverage teams have not been great. Fitzpatrick has gotten looks and opportunities and made a play or 2 on kick coverage. But in terms of the punt coverage, it has been really dicey. And Pittsburgh, I'm sure they realize when you have a guy like Johnston hitting 60-yard punts, that's going to create, more return opportunities, and it's going to force these guys to really be able to cover well. I think Pittsburgh has a lot of good coverage guys up front in Medikevich and Killebrew, Mark Robinson. They need those first line defense outside gunners, and they don't really have those options right now.
Man, a year ago it was a lot easier with the gunners, wasn't it?
Yeah, you were set. You had Boykin, you had Pierre, and you were good to go. So you got to at least get 1 standout gunner. Maybe it's hard to get 2 from off the street here last second, but at least get that 1 ace guy. If you can do that, then you'll be in a lot better place.
I agree.
All right, Dave, where to from here? Let's talk about briefly injury settlement news. Pittsburgh losing some cap space, kind of, I mean, not significantly, but it's a big number of over 200K in cap space. Can you explain what's happening there?
Yeah, it's now up the total. And look, these add up quick, that's why when you go through and you see these guys getting waived injured, and then obviously they revert to IR, and then within 5 to 7 business days, you see them receive settlements for the team. And as we talked the other day, there was like 80 something thousand in a couple of settlements that were done. Well, since we last talked on Wednesday, on Thursday morning, they lost another $231,111 to injury settlements, and that now brings the total to $315,000 in total. I think there are at least 3 or 4 more, I think, that have yet to be reported by the NFLPA. Now, it's hard once again because they don't give you the names or the weeks, and then you have to. I have a chart here that's got each. What I've done is I've taken the chart of split salaries, divided it by 18, and then I have a chart by however many weeks that adds up to. And then what you have to do, and hopefully there's no other transactions that coincide on the NFLPA sheet, because all you do is you see, okay, here's what the cap number was yesterday, here's what the cap number is today according to the NFLPA sheet. You figure out the difference of how much it drops, and then you just try to match up what the numbers, especially in this instance when you're only dealing with injury settlements, what number matches what number of weeks. And I love it and I hate it, because you once again, there's so many different combinations, especially if you get guys on the same split salary amount. But long story short, I think I'm pretty confident that one of these in this last batch of 231,111 belonged to Braden Fehoko, because the math matches up there. So, but we don't have specifics still on who goes to on who goes to what, within that. But once again, we should see a few more of those hit here in the next, couple of weeks for sure.
Okay. Just give us a quick cap update too. I know it hasn't changed much since we last talked about it, but it's been a little bit since we've had a cap edition on the podcast. So kind of remind people where Pittsburgh sits heading into roster cutdowns.
Yeah, pending a few more of these roster updates, 15 injury settlements, 15,541,579 in total cap space. Now that's the rule of 51. You also need to keep in mind that once again, the forthcoming injury settlements, which still should not be a huge total overall. You do have David Perales on a split salary on injured reserve that will ultimately count against the cap number. Let's see, Herbig is on injured reserve at a full number, so he's still in the rule of 51. You still have to consider you got $4 million or so that'll go to a practice squad total. You still have what's going to happen with the extensions with some of these guys to impact this. The big takeaway here is that over $15.5 million would still allow you to afford to trade for a Brandon Ayuk before getting a contract done with him, should that indeed fall into Steelers' favor that way. But they've got, this thing's there's going to be a lot of change in this cap number between now and the start of the regular season here, which obviously now is just a couple of weeks away in totality here. So, and I still think that they're going to get extensions done with these guys. I think, though, with them having to have a placeholder until they get finality with Brandon Ayuk, is probably, held some things up when it comes to some of these extensions. But you're still going to see movement done here. You're still going to see cash spent by this team for 2024 between now and the start of the regular season.
At what point does it become a problem for the Ayuk situation to still be in limbo with the intent, maybe the hope of getting Freiermuth and Hayward done, given that Pittsburgh's policy is that extensions in those talks disappear once the season begins. Like, if we're 3 days before the season starts, hypothetically, and this Ayuk situation is still in a holding pattern, and God help us if it is, but if it is, I mean, does it impact Pittsburgh's willingness to do something? Because if they want to get something done with Hayward and Freiermuth, this seems to be holding it up.
Well, we've got a question actually within the email machine here, and I want to make sure because somebody asked it. Brett now even asked this. He says, I have a question about potential contract extensions and how they could impact trade negotiations. You previously speculated on the podcast that Steelers want to do a few extensions, Freiermuth and Hayward among them, but need to hold open a salary cap room to add Brandon Ayuk till they get the final decision from San Francisco. In theory, the Niners don't need to decide until essentially the trade deadline. He says, my question is does that set a deadline of week 1 to get the deal done? The Steelers have been firm that they don't do extensions in season. However, San Francisco has showed a tendency to go last minute on this type of negotiation. Would the Steelers be willing to extend that window in this case, or is this one of those tendencies that if the Niners can't make a decision by the time the Steelers get on the plane, then the deal is off and they announce whatever extensions they have likely already agreed to? Here's the thing. It would be an interesting scenario. Let's assume that and it's dangerous to do. Let's assume the Steelers have not given the 49ers a drop dead date of, the day before, the regular or the start of the regular season here, and that this even rolls into the start of the regular season. And let's assume the Steelers remain interested in that, but they would have to still keep the available amount of cap space to acquire at least the 5th-year option amount that Brandon Ayuk is on until they did a new contract with them. Now, do keep in mind, however, that every game that goes forward, that the 49ers would be charged off a week's pay against their salary cap, and then that would make it less of the amount that the Steelers have to accommodate. But even so, let's say that this rolls up, and let's look at it if they did give them a first, a day out from the start of the regular season deadline to the 49ers, but yet they still wanted to get some of these players done. First and foremost, the cut down to 53 is probably going to create some a little bit of cap room, because everybody in the rule of 51 right now is probably not going to make the 53-man roster. So there might be some cap room that a little bit opens up that way. You also have Cole Holcomb going to the reserve PUP, and then that should go on a decreased salary, which will open up a couple of million that way on top of it. If you want to extract, in other words, maybe you could fit in an extension for Pat Freiermuth with what you save there, and then with his cap number going up, the offset of all that might still leave you enough cap room to acquire Brandon Ayuk. Does that make sense?
It does. You'll get additional cap space created here pretty soon, and you can use that additional space to sign Freiermuth, and then you're kind of back to close to where you're at now post Freiermuth signing, and still have the space to add Ayuk. But it starts getting more complicated, certainly, with the math and the numbers in that scenario.
Now, another thing you can look at this way too is what once you get Cameron Hayward out of this last preseason game, healthy, hopefully, you could put. One of the holdups maybe with the whole Hayward thing might be, well, how much cap space do we need an extension of his to create in 2024 so that maybe we don't have to touch Minkah Fitzpatrick's contract? Okay.
Right. Because there is no, or likely to be no new money for Hayward. So that's not an issue with the cap, but it's a question of how much do you want to take away and have available to you.
Right. And how much do you want to limit your exposure to him as far as dead money,
right, which is key.
Which is key in all this. So I suppose you get into a position where, okay, we have a feeling this might go this way or go that way. You could go ahead and do the extension with Cam Hayward, and whatever that frees up is going to free up a pretty decent amount of cap space, or should. Right. Assuming it gets done like I think it's going to get done,
But couldn't they extend Hayward? I understand the consideration about how much do you take it down, but couldn't they extend Hayward now and then just do Pat? And you're going to have enough cap space to add Ayuk after all those things.
Yeah, but once again, maybe their big picture thinking is, man, we want to only expose this amount of bonus proration for him to limit the dead money as much as possible.
Yeah, but
you probably have a ballpark of what that already is.
Right. It shouldn't really impact the Ayuk situation too much because you already kind of know what your exposure for Hayward wants and needs to be, regardless of other outside moves. You kind of know where you want to be at on Cam going forward, I think.
Right, and plus you don't know what else might be out there too at Final Cutdown too.
Yeah, and we're talking about them adding. I doubt they're going to add somebody super expensive, but you never know.
Right. So I mean, maybe this ends up being, when it's all said and done, maybe they take the bulk of that $16 million that Cam's due in 2024 and turn it into a signing bonus, and just do what would basically be a glorified restructure on him. You're just adding 2 years, onto it. But I mean, that all of that need. Long story short, they have the leeway here to let this Brandon Ayuk thing leak into right at the start of the season and really into the season. Now, I guess the overarching question that Brett has is, well, yeah, they normally have a deadline of not doing extensions once the season starts. Well, this would be obviously a hugely unique situation.
I was going to ask you though, does this create an exception? Does the Pandora's box begin to open if you were to trade for Ayuk, give him a new deal mid-season?
Yeah, but have you even gone anywhere close near such a Pandora's box in Steelers history like this? Where it would be a one-off. But look, Ayuk's not coming unless he gets a new deal.
Sure.
So you if you did acquire him after the start of the season, well, then obviously you're going to have to give him a new deal, plain and simple.
Of course. But that does beg the question, does that precedent open up? You can make a case, and I'm sure if there's a case to be made, an agent will make a case for it. I promise you that.
Right. But easily the Steelers would point to that and say, look, that's a guy that we traded for. This is not a player on the roster type situation.
No, I understand. Yeah.
It's a lot easier to frame it that way. No, it's not our business to talk. But what they'd say is, look, we had this contract worked out with him before the season even started. Mm-hmm. It was just a matter of executing it. We couldn't execute it until he actually became a Steeler.
Right. The point would be they weren't in control of the whole situation the way they would be in a player already on the roster negotiation and in normal situations and circumstances. So I'm just, it's a thought, be just something I think that teams or agents, I should say, would be trying to angle for down the road potentially.
Look, everybody wants this thing behind us when it comes to Ayuk at this point. Man, I've heard we listen to everything on KNBR in San Francisco from Shanahan and John Lynch and Michael Silver, longtime beat writer of 49ers, was on here yesterday. Nobody knows which way this thing's going yet. But there is an interesting, with the Commanders trading Jahan Dotson to the Eagles on Thursday. You turn around and you look at their depth chart now, Alex. What do you think about the Commanders' depth chart at wide receiver right now?
It's scary Terry McLaurin, and not a lot else that's proven. They did draft Luke McCaffrey, and Darby Brown has made some plays, but it's looking light.
He's too. I went back and looked at Dynamic Brown, man. What has he done in the first 2 years of this league?
Not much. I think he's made some plays this preseason. He was on the receiving end of that long Jaden Daniels catch down the right sideline for 42 yards. So I think he's having a good camp from the little that I've gathered. But yeah, I mean, they've had a veteran in Jamison Crowder, but he's end of his career. McCaffrey was to be pretty raw coming out of Rice. I don't know what he's done this summer. He was a quarterback for a time before making the move to receiver. So yeah, I mean, and as Silver made the point, Adam Peters, the GM, was the assistant GM in San Francisco the last couple of years. And so there's an easy relationship to be had there. And of course, Ayuk and Jane Daniels, and they're best friends and were teammates at Arizona State for a season. Silver says the Commanders are not out. And who knows? But it makes sense to me.
Man, where's man, the older you get, the time just flies, man. Dynamic Brown's been in the league 3 years already. 29 catches, 476 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's a light resume. It's a new regime. I don't know how they're evaluating him. Seems to be making some plays. I don't know what his preseason stats are outside of that long catch, but I don't know what McCaffrey has done. So we'll see.
And you want to surround your rookie quarterback with as much options as possible, especially when he is on a rookie deal on top of it here. I'm going to read off all the names right now. Scary Terry McLaurin, Diami Brown, Olamide Zacchaeus. The old Falcons guy. Bryson Tremaine, Luke McCaffrey, Jamison Crowder, Marcus Rosemai, Jack Saint, the rookie that's out of Georgia, Mitchell Tinsley, Kashmir Allen, Martavis Bryant, Davian Davis, and Byron Pringle. I mean, that makes you feel like the Steelers wide receiver room right now.
Yeah, it's a number one and a lot of unknowns and some question marks. And it is actually pretty similar. You got a 3rd-round pick in McCaffrey, the way Pittsburgh has a 3rd-round pick in Roman Wilson. You got some veteran guys in Crowder and the way that he's Van Jefferson, not the same type of player, but same kind of veteran in the room type of deal. So yeah, I mean, the Commanders have always been reportedly out. I'm not entirely sure why that's been, and they just picked up a 3rd-round pick in that Dotson deal, which I thought was a great return on investment. And the Niners are only going to get back day 2 picks, which is kind of where this thing seems to be heading. That would make sense. Now, the Commanders don't have a receiver to trade to the Niners, which is what the Niners have always kind of wanted, and hang up in a deal with Pittsburgh. But if they can get a 3rd-round pick and flip that for something else, then that makes sense.
Yeah, look, they have plenty of cap space. Washington does. So this isn't an issue of cap space, or I wonder where they are in cash spending.
They're actually one of the lowest cash spending teams. I thought you'd said that a little while back.
I know Dallas and the Steelers certainly are.
Denver was one. The only issue would just be what happens with McLaurin. If you bring in Ayuk and pay him $28-30 million, McLaurin's going to sit there with his hand out saying, me next.
Let's see. Commanders are... they're in the bottom third. They're in the top bottom. They're the top of the bottom third in cash spending right now.
Okay, so like 22nd, 23rd in cash spending, and the rookie quarterback helps obviously with the cash spending aspect. So it's still plausible, and we've seen teams that are out until they're not, and they're right back in. So we'll keep watching.
That does set up an interesting dynamic, and I think even Michael Silver somewhat alluded to it, did he not? You got McLaurin. His APY is $23.2 million. What's he going to say if you bring in an Ayuk at 28, 29, 30 million?
Sure, he will want paid, but if they wanted to, they could pay him. Nothing prevents them from doing it.
What they probably could do is they could probably move some money forward on him if they wanted to.
The old AB approach, or what the Browns did with Cooper this offseason. Yeah, they could. He's not in last year of his contract, right? So they could move forward some money.
Yeah, and here's another thing to think about in all this too. 2025 is set to McLaurin technically has a 2026 year on there, but it's a void year. Mm-hmm. So, and he is, and once again, where's the time gone? He's 29, I think, right now. He'll be 30 next year, and that's technically the final year of his contract. What are you doing at receiver, even getting into next year with them,
Okay, I know we're making this Commanders Depot, but we've kind of exhausted some of the Steelers stock. This sounds crazy, and it kind of is. And I'm just speculating because it's not Steelers stuff, and I can speculate more wildly. Would you trade McLaurin in that 3rd-round pick you picked up from the Eagles to the Niners for Brandon Ayuk?
I mean, is such a thing plausible? Well, look, I mean, they'd be replacing a 14 point something salary with a 15, was he 16, 17? I mean, they could make that work definitely, as long as they didn't have to give McLaurin more money. I think the overarching takeaway of that would be, well, it puts Washington back kind of in the same boat where they just have the one.
Sure, but they have a younger player, to me, a better receiver. McLaurin's a really good receiver, but Ayuk is better, and he's 3 years younger. It's still a win for Washington, in my viewpoint.
Yeah, look, is it plausible? Yes. The short answer is yes.
So, I mean, obviously, I know McLaurin is really valued there, but if you're McLaurin, you say, can I go to San Francisco and maybe win a Super Bowl after toiling in Washington for multiple years? I'm sure he's excited about Daniels and the new regime and everything, but there's an attractiveness for McLaurin to go out there, out west.
Yeah, give him a chance to win a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. So anyway, speculating wildly, obviously, and we're getting into the weeds about this whole thing. But the point is, I think the Ayuk situation becomes more and more of an issue on Pittsburgh's end as their kind of self-imposed deadlines for their contracts start coming due. And I'm sure Pat Frymuth is saying, can we get a deal done with Ayuk or not done? Because I would like to get paid very much. He said that on the Christian Kuntz podcast that aired yesterday. The other just quick thought with Ayuk, Tom Pelissero speculated the longer that this holdup with Ayuk goes on, the more likely that the trade value that Ayuk has is decreased, and the Pittsburgh could give up less if this thing continues to drag on into late August, early September. Do you buy that? Because I disagree with Pelissero.
Well, there's been a lot of talk now. Is it get to the point where Ayuk won't be a full go in week one? And if this did not happen, say by right after this weekend, then I would say that Ayuk might be on a pitch count for whatever team he ends up on in week one. But after that, I mean, I would think you'd be able to get that guy up to speed fairly quick. So I can't see it greatly impacting trade compensation, because your rebuttal would be, well, he's not going to be a full go in week one.
Yeah, me neither. You're going to have this guy for the next 4 or 5 years. Week one is not a hill of beans to that long-term view. And listen, they traded for Minkah Fitzpatrick on like a Tuesday, and he was playing 100% of the snaps on a Sunday against, funny enough, the Niners. I know that's not a game readiness thing because he was already on a team playing, but from a playbook standpoint, didn't create an issue there. And if you're Pittsburgh, and if this thing finally comes down to it, and it's September 3rd, let's say, and the Niners say, okay, we're done with Ayuk, we couldn't figure it out, we'll trade him to Pittsburgh. I'm not going to be Omar Khan and says, well, how about we do it for a different term? Like, just take the win at that point and get Ayuk, and don't try to get greedy and get squeeze the Niners for everything that you can. So if you can trade for him and get the deal done.
That's like that old ice cream video I keep where you keep handing him the ice cream cone, but you keep flipping it around. He never gets it. And, John Lynch even said, that he's not to that point where concerned about, week one, especially for a guy in their own offense and all. But it's getting close where you do have to wonder, how, especially if they were to trade him to whatever team they trade him to, how limited he'd be in week one.
Sure, but Ayuk at 80% of whatever readiness is still better than what Pittsburgh has 100% readiness beyond George Pickens right now.
Are you buying or selling that the Washington Commanders might still be in this?
Yeah, I'll buy it. I mean, I have no idea, what degree to buy it and if they actually will, but I'll buy from the sense of it makes sense for them to still be in it and still be watching, even if the reporting is that they're out of it right now, because there's no good reason for them to be all out on Ayuk right now.
I agree. I agree with everything you said. I'm buying it, and I think it's plausible, very, very, and even more plausible after trading away John Dotson.
Right. All right, Dave, I want to just mention here briefly Russell Wilson. He spoke with the media, and I think he set the tone, in the language the team has followed, to say that we're not concerned, for everyone to kind of relax. It is preseason. that this thing could still get better. And so some people have taken issue with those comments. A very angry Stephen A. Smith in particular, who for some reason was screaming on First Take yesterday. Not that we usually care about what Stephen A. has to say, but do you have any issue with Russell Wilson trying to play the calming force with all the questions and concern about the Seahawks offense?
I think that's who he is. I think that's who he is. I mean, we've talked since they've acquired him that, he even though a lot of it, cliche, obviously. I mean, what else are you going to get out of a veteran quarterback's mouth that's been around as long as he has at this point when it comes to criticism and all like that? Is it a bit canned? Does he go over the top, making sure he mentions every player on the roster when talking about position groups? I get that. I realize some people view him as corny and all like that. I just think he's been around the block enough that he's known he's learned how to say things in a manner that it's tough to take out of context, if you will.
And that's why, at least in part, you brought him in to be a leader, to be a steadying and calming force. Because, listen, you think things sound rough right now? Wait until there's a bad game in week 7 and your offense plays poorly and you take a tough loss. And the season really feels like it's coming apart at the seams, because it's going to feel a whole lot different once these games start counting and those L's that stick in the loss column. So you need a guy like that. I mean, some of the stuff, I get it. Whenever he says, "Oh, Broderick Jones, that's why I came here for Broderick Jones," it's like, is it like? I feel like you could say that about anything to Russell Wilson.
He said about Cam Hayward too, though, didn't he? Right. During that same interview,
he says that to all the pretty girls. People are like, Ryan McCollum. That's Ryan McCollum's why I came to Pittsburgh. It's like, no, it's not Russell Wilson. But I'm sure the overall takeaway was that they have this young offensive line that you can build around and protect you. But a little bit of that, I can kind of understand how that can kind of sound corny, but the overall premise of him being a leader and trying to calm things down here, because it's still August, I think is what Pittsburgh needs.
And he's always that guy in press conferences, and Mark Sheriff takes issue with it. He's always the one that says, "I got to play better." You don't want him pointing fingers. He's a typical cliche response guy at this point, and I don't take issue with that.
Yeah, you expected it. You kind of know that's his MO. I think you've couched it well, Dave. He's Mr. Mayor, and that's fine. And again, what I've always said is, in terms of the personality, it comes down to how well the team is playing. If you're winning and if he's playing well,
that's all that matters, is when he gets on the field. Is he going to do enough to win ball games? And will, after 3, 4, 5 weeks, are you going to be able to point to that position specifically, the quarterback position, say, this is why we're not putting the ball in the end zone. This is why we're not winning games. And then that's how you're going to judge this guy once he gets on the field. Plain and simple, not anything that comes out, unless he goes, total rogue here, heel turn, which I don't see that
even programmed to do.
Right. The way Russell Wilson's going to be judged in 2024 is what he does on the field, plain and simple, not what he says during press conferences or appearances on the Cam Hayward podcast or anything of that nature. That's what it comes down to. And look, he's got obviously a lot on the line this season. This season is going to determine whether he continues to be a starter in the NFL at a nice paycheck, or if he gets into that middling role, backup role, veteran backup role, that a lot of quarterbacks go through later on in their career. So that there's a lot of incentive for Russell Wilson to play his best, obviously, and make this thing work, and hopefully become this. He probably hopes to become the Steelers quarterback for the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, he does not want to have to keep bouncing around from place to place. He wants to be long-term in Pittsburgh, and I believe that when he says that. But even in terms of how his comments are judged, whenever he's playing well, when the team is winning, and he's saying those kind of maybe cliche type things, he's Danger Russ. That's like that tagline. When they're not playing well, when he's struggling, he's cornball Russ. So it's all just based off of how his play is, and that impacts how people interpret and take his language. And when they're not playing well in the moment, people don't like it. But if they turn things around and Russ has a great game and he goes out there and says the same 10 cliches, people go, oh, we love it. That's what Pittsburgh needs. So even in terms of how his language is viewed, it's all based around his play and the team's performance.
Well, obviously, if this team isn't winning games and he's still the sky's not falling guy, which is who he is, we'll just go get him the next game, let's ride. Here we go. That will wear on, that. Sure. But it'll be an overall frustration because the team's not winning and not putting points on the scoreboard.
Right. Again, the language is always viewed through the lens of how you're playing. And it's true for really anybody, but it's really true for your quarterback and for Wilson.
I'll go back to what I said, a week or two, whatever it was, or especially after reporting day at training camp. I don't know if you could ask him to do any more than what he has done up until stepping on the field. I don't know. I just don't know what else you would want out of this guy as a veteran quarterback coming to a new team with everything leading up to even the moment he stepped on the practice field at Latrobe. Right. I mean, if you want to take issue that he's too positive, okay, but I'd rather have that guy instead of a guy that says 7 words to a response in a press conference.
Let me ask you this: is there anything that could happen in this finale against Detroit that prevents Wilson from being the Week 1 starter besides injury?
No, I don't. I really don't think so. It would have to be atrocious. I don't even think he's going to play enough snaps.
Yeah, that's true.
To have the level of atrociousness that it would take. So, look, I know you've been lockstep with me thinking this way from the moment that he was signed. I've not given much thought to him not being the Week 1 quarterback.
Was there any part of this process, even in camp, when Fields, the reporting was good and we had some pretty positive things to say about him and you saw the clips online and Wilson's held out? Did at any point, did your mind begin to change about who the starter would be?
No.
Okay.
Of course, I'm not sitting there watching what all you watch, but I trust, that what you reported was what you reported. And obviously I've watched the first 2 preseason games, but nothing has made me feel any different throughout this process that Russell Wilson won't be the Week 1 quarterback. And quite honestly, I think that's the right decision.
I was just going to ask you. Yep.
Overall. Now, once again, as I've stated, I mean, if you get into Week 3, Week 4, I mean, Week 5, and this thing isn't going well, and the receiver room isn't what you need somebody that can take off with the football and extend plays and add that element to your offense, because of the sheer fact that that's the thing that you're going to have to really rely on more of. Then you got to you can't be scared to pull the plug on Russell Wilson. If you can't let this thing go into Week 9, Week 10, Week 12 with that. You've got to go into this with an open mind that whatever the week is, that if the quarterback play or some combination of that with other things, mobility, all like that, is not working, you can't be afraid, because once again, you've got to come out. The big thing you got to come out of this season is, do we have one of these 2 guys that can be the franchise quarterback for at least the next couple of years? You've got to figure that out coming out of this season.
Yeah, I agree.
And the only way you're gonna figure that out is to get both these guys on the field.
Can you see enough from Fields, though, if Wilson starts the majority of the year, to have a comfortable evaluation on his long-term viability and giving him a new contract?
With Fields? Well, I mean, obviously, if he has to take over because of injury or poor play, assuming that's not weeks.
Well, yeah, but what if Wilson starts 15, 16 games, but he's still like, you're not super confident that he's going to be the guy?
Yeah, that's a rough situation. Once again,
Right.
like we had said earlier in the season, man, it feels like you can't have the will he or won't he or well, maybe, it feels like you've got to be kind of definitive on your evaluations in game with your offensive coordinator, with your system, with your personnel to make a competent decision.
Sure, but there's a chance you may not feel definitive. You may feel trending in a direction. Yeah, we feel good about this guy, but do you think Wilson's going to have an amazing year where he reverts back to 5 years ago, Russ? I don't think it's going to be that kind of guy.
Look at both these guys. Look at both these guys just with the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat only. Is there anything that makes you think that either one of these two guys will increase their number to something that you can win with 6.5, 6.7 even,
I think hopefully a more stable offense, hopefully a better run game can create some of those bigger chunk plays. That's kind of what I'm banking on.
Right, but I mean that stat does not lie.
No, it doesn't. I understand. So let me bring it back though, because obviously we're kind of getting down the road. Assuming that Wilson is the starting quarterback, when does an announcement come? Does that come that Tuesday presser before week 1?
Mike Tomlin is going to say, I've got no reason to tell you guys,
Will he tell us at all before week 1?
I think he will in that first press conference. Okay. in that
Me
Tuesday.
Too.
I think he'll say Russ is going to be, and look, they've got to announce the captains and all like that. Right.
Sure. I don't know when they do that I know they do it that week before. I don't know what day it is that week before, if it's Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever the case is.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll know.
It should be that Tuesday before. That'd be September 3rd, because that's when he announced Trubisky as the starter in 2022. I think technically that's when he said Pickett last year, but we all knew that Pickett was going to be the starter last year. So point is, don't expect Tomlin to declare a starting quarterback post game after the Lions game.
Right, because he doesn't have to, and he likes playing that game.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Dave, anything else to talk about? Anything else to discuss in this Lions game, offense, defense, special teams, or anything else involving the team or around the league?
No, it's just going to be it's going to be fun, to watch the game, and then fun to break it down, and then fun to look at the snap counts, and then, try put our best educated guesses out there as far as 53-man roster predictions. And then it's going to move fast, right? After that, start having a lot. There's going to be a lot of news to report on this team the next couple of weeks for sure.
Calm before the storm. Fill in the blank, Dave. Combined, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields will lead X number of touchdown drives against Detroit. Not necessarily passing touchdowns, but just Pittsburgh Steelers offensive drives that end in touchdowns where Wilson or Fields are the quarterback.
2.
All right. I had no idea what answer I was going to give there. I should have thought about that, but I like 2. Will John Rice Plumlee play quarterback in this game?
No.
Okay. Will
you got to get? It feels like you got to get Kyle out at least a little bit more work here at the end of this thing.
Because he's not going to see the lineup for a long time after that, and maybe some work in the fourth quarter would do him some good as that number 3 guy. How many carries for Cordell Patterson in this game?
2.
I'll say 4. I'll double your 2. Oh, let's see. Does Jeremiah Moon play more snaps than Kyron Johnson defensively in this game?
I'm going to say no.
Ooh. So you're really thinking Moon is just done for at this point?
Yeah, just once again, I don't know if this is injury related or not. But man, what a lopsided. Unless they, if he does play more snaps than Kyron Johnson in this game, then it might be a flip of what we saw in that second one, and that very well could be the case. I don't know.
Let's see, what else do I have? Will Rodney Williams play more offensive snaps than Michael Pruitt in this game? I hope he does. I think you've seen enough out of Pruitt. I don't know what more you need to learn out of Michael Pruitt offensively.
Yeah, I'll say yeah on that. Yeah.
Okay. It's not gone that way so far. I know the injuries impacted Williams. I don't know if that's still even an issue. Maybe it is in a minor degree, but I hope so. When the first team offensive line comes out and it's the second team, however that looks, who is the first center in? Who replaces Zach Frazier? First man in. Still could be McCollum. I don't think it's still possible.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go McCollum.
Okay. Who's the third guy then? If there's
Spencer Anderson.
All right. Who will be the second team tackles once that first team exits and reorganizes? And which side will they play?
Broderick Jones on the left, Dylan Cook on the right.
I'm going to say Broderick Jones on the left. I'll say Spencer Anderson on the right. So they do something a little different in this game. I think it's basically all my questions. Will Des Fitzpatrick make enough plays to cement his case as a special teamer on this team in this contest?
Yeah, that's the golden one right there. He will have a special teams tackle in this game.
All right, good deal. I think I'm out of my list that I'm making up on the fly here of my questions for this finale. So good deal overall. Excited for it. And yeah, it's the last chance for these guys to play. And I still miss the fourth preseason game.
I do too, fun, and I know the talk is even to make them even less and get away from it altogether. That will break my ever-loving heart, man, because I don't get to go to training camp and see these guys, and a lot of the evaluation that I do from obviously once this team reports to training camp is why I actually watch the tape, and I understand why the push for all this and all like that. But heck, man, if you don't want to play your starters or whatnot, don't play your starters. How are some of these guys ever going to make a roster if all they're doing is practicing in training camp and going through maybe a scrimmage or something like that against another team? Man, Mike Tomlin talks about in stadium all the time. Every year we talk about what they do under the lights in stadium. If you don't want to play your veterans or whatnot, or I understand that, don't play them. Put 3 preseason games together of nothing but second and third teamers or fourth teamers or whatever. But the thought of no preseason football really disturbs me. at my football core. I'm a traditionalist at heart. I love the 4 preseason game model. I can live with the 3 preseason game model. I suppose I could even live with the 2 preseason game model. But, man, don't take it down any further than that.
I don't know if you're going to get your wish. I mean, once they go to 18 games, they're going to go to 2, which they have to. Unless there's a new CBA, but the current CBA says you can't play more than 20 games in a season, preseason and regular season. So that is kind of mandated. I know teams are using joint practices and substitute, but it's not the same to me. It's not the same when you're in a practice setting. You're not. Most of these teams, I assume, are not full tackling, so that's a huge element of football being taken away. You're not, dealing with crowd noise. You're not dealing with being away from your coach and running the huddle by yourself where the offensive coordinator is 3 feet from you. It's just a whole different world, whole different environment where the practice setting can't replicate. Special teams, how do you replicate special teams? Even in joint practices, it's still not the same to really be able to go full speed and full bore. So, yeah, we're not fans, but we are in the minority on that one.
And look, you'll never not see me talk, about thinking about the players, whether it be money or CBA negotiations and safety and all that kind of stuff. I get that, but man, this league is compiled mostly of rookies and players that are not, as a whole, vested, right?
Right.
And you got to give these guys a chance to show what they can do to make some of these rosters. I mean, some of these guys probably wouldn't even seen the light of day if not for preseason. Even talking Steelers specific, Roosevelt, Nix. I mean, just go through the list over the years, right? Sure. Yeah, it disturbs me to think about what's coming.
All right, that's
but that's my problem.
Old man yelling at cloud segment, but I'm with you. We'll both shake our fists at the cloud here. All right, Dave, anything else to talk about? Or if not, we can get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, we got one from Homeless Greg. Greg, I hope you're not homeless. He says, is this a make or bust season for Pat Freiermuth? He hasn't been signed to an extension. It has a history of concussions and other injuries, hamstrings in 2022, 2023, MCL sprain, etc. Is a subpar inline blocker, and his receiving stats have been abysmal since his rookie season. Average 520 receiving yards and 2 TDs through 2022 and 2023, being that they use such high draft capital on him. Is this a make or bust season for him? Taking draft position into consideration at this point, would you consider Hayward a better tight end at this point in their careers? Greg, first and foremost, this would be I think they're going to sign him to an extension. Alex, do you think they're going to sign him to an extension here in the next couple of weeks?
Freiermuth?
Yeah.
Yeah, I still think that's going to happen. I'm not sure when. I thought it would have happened by now, but I still think it will occur.
I mean, and once he signs that, it really, it's just what can he do from in his career past that. So I don't view it as a make or bust season when it comes to that. We can definitely revisit this conversation. I mean, look, it would be. I mean, we can visit that part of it now. If they don't sign him to an extension before week 1, yeah, it essentially does become a make or break season for him.
Yeah. It does, I guess. How happy are you with the Freiermuth pick? And that's come up a little bit more the last 24 hours when we see the Creed Humphrey gets his long-term deal in Kansas City. Humphrey, somebody that Pittsburgh passed on twice, but was still sitting there in the second round when they took Freiermuth instead of Creed. How would you evaluate the selection and value that Pittsburgh got?
Well, if you're going to have that conversation, you need to throw Najee Harris's name into it as well, because the easiest way around all that to probably satisfy me, you, and several others listening to this would be just draft Creed Humphrey in the first round. You probably still get Pat Freiermuth in the second round. You can address the running back position with the pick that they spent on Kendrick Green, right? Or some similarity they're after there. So that's the way you frame all that and still have Freiermuth. Look, if you roll back, I had a 3rd round grade on Pat Freiermuth. Now you can get into, look, you're only talking about a separation of 32 players here, and essentially a 2nd and 3rd round grade are probably about similar, as long as you're not saying, oh, this guy's got a high 2nd round grade on him and this guy's got a low 3rd round grade on him. I mean, you kind of split hairs when you get into that. But the real conversation at this point would be to have would be, well, you could have had, your guy at center a couple of years ago what's his name?
In Creed?
In Creed. You don't draft a fungible position at running back in Najee Harris, and then you go ahead and draft Pat Freiermuth in the second.
Sure, but even just putting all those things aside, just Freiermuth himself, in terms of the value, has Pittsburgh, did they get good value?
I think it's been okay. I mean, it's obviously not great, but I think he is as advertised.
Okay. I've been happy with it. I mean, listen, I wanted to Creed as much as anybody. I would have taken him in the first round. I would have taken him in the second round over Pat. But I like Pat Freiermuth. He's top 12 or so tight end in football. No, he got hurt last year, but his blocking has to improve, but he's a steady tight end, and Pittsburgh's going to need that guy this year. So I'm happy with the pick, and it does make me feel better that Pittsburgh, at least, they didn't whiff when they drafted Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth, even though they passed on, to me, a greater talent in Creed Humphrey. Some will disagree, and some will say they whiffed on Harris and Freiermuth, and that's your prerogative. To me, those are not busts. Those are not whiffs. Those are talented players that have helped this team in a positive direction.
Here's the thing, though. When you draft specifically in the first 2 rounds, right? When you draft these guys, you're, a win you aim for those guys to be extension guys. You aim for those guys to be long-term players on your football team. And if you whiff in those situations enough, it catches up to you, especially a team like the Steelers that quote unquote loves to build through the draft. So what does it say if you get to a point where, look, you already have kind of crippled the franchise by missing on a franchise quarterback with a first round pick a couple of years ago, right? And now you're in a situation where you've got Russell Wilson versus Justin Fields conversations. You get what you get when that happens, right? And you miss on a first round quarterback. I mean, that's what you get for missing in that situation. It looks like it's trending toward Pat Freiermuth getting an extension here, but you don't draft first round players to not within 4 or 5 years be extending those guys and they're being core people in your franchise. And I think it says something. Should we get to a point again, and most people would agree, well, it's going to get to that point. It's not going to happen, Dave. But if you don't extend Najee Harris, well, I mean, you draft players in these first 2 rounds to be long-term Steelers.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, while I think Harris and Freiermuth are good players, I'm not talking about the positional value. And if they should have taken a running back in the first round, I'm all for building inside out. That's why I brought up the tweet I tweeted out before the 2021 NFL draft that if it was my choice, I would take Creed Humphrey at 24 over Najee Harris. So there's certainly a critique that comes with the positional value of the Pittsburgh top, but just looking at the player himself, is he a talented player? Did he help your team win? In a positive direction? I think both guys check those boxes here.
Yeah, but I think you got to go beyond that, though. You're a team that builds through the draft, and also you're a team that builds through being able to draft these guys and then make long-term Steelers out of them. So you're not continually going back to that position very often, so you can draft at other positions and do the same thing in the first 2 rounds.
No, I get that. I mean, and listen, when they drafted Najee, my thought was they'll have this guy for 5 years and he'll be out the door. I mean, that was just my thought of how he was, older prospect that came out, some more wear and tear at Alabama, running back, second contracts, all that kind of stuff. It may not even get to 5 years. It may be only be the 4 years since they declined the option. So I understand that standpoint, but it's still better to draft a guy that helps you for 4 years as opposed to the first round bust that helps you for 4 years and is not a talented player, and Artie Burns, for example, a Jarvis Jones. I mean, give me the guy.
Devin Bush.
Because
that list is starting to grow way too long.
It is. But around the NFL, it's like a 50% hit rate in the first round. Half the teams find a guy, half the teams, just whiff completely. And so to be in that 50% that even gives you 4 solid years puts you in the top, or at least the top half of the NFL, which is going to be a good starting point, and hopefully you can build upon that from there.
You should be able to draft enough good players in a 3 to 4 year period of span that there's no question of who to go out to and spend the cash on. And that's where we're at right now with this team.
Yeah. That's why they're one of the lowest cash spending, in part because they've not retained many first round picks in recent years. Kenny Pickett's gone. Najee Harris is almost 1 foot out the door. Terrell Edmonds, Devin Bush, a lot of guys that did not come back on second contracts.
How crippling was that Pickett pick at this point?
Well, I don't know if I would use the word crippling, because it wasn't a top 3 or top 5 pick, and there was no other quarterback that you could have taken in hindsight that would have changed the course of your franchise, which is more common with, say, the team that takes a quarterback first or second overall. But yeah, anytime you miss on a quarterback, it sets you back. It to me, what I would say is it's prolonging the purgatory that Pittsburgh is in, where they're trying to find that franchise guy of the future.
I mean, and occasionally, I mean, good on them for hitting on Watt and all like that, right? But and then obviously you trade for another one in Minka. But I mean, you look back at these first round picks that this team's had of recent time.
Yeah, you certainly want to see it improve, and hopefully it will under Omar Khan. It's a big year for Broderick Jones.
I mean, you should be having questions about Broderick Jones right now, right?
No, I mean, you want to talk. You wish it was a more optimistic tone we were entering the year with. I still think the injury he's dealing with is problematic. I know Pat Meyer spoke with the Trib and says it's not really an issue in game, but I don't know how much I really buy that. But regardless, he's got to play better, so it's a big year for him.
All right, I'm gonna rattle off some names. You know them. Artie Burns, TJ Watt, Terrell Edmonds, Devin Bush, Najee Harris, Kenny Pickett, Broderick Jones.
Yeah, there's more misses than hits there. And you have one home run in Watt, and you have a couple of solid singles, and then a lot of strikeouts. And what Kevin Colbert was really good at early in his drafting career was hitting very few strikeouts, if any, and a lot of doubles in the occasional home run. So that's where you've seen the first round picks start to diminish.
All right. Let's see. From Bryce, here's my question, Alex. When you were at camp, did you see the Steelers putting any emphasis on playing with tempo and pace, sans the 2-minute drill? Haven't heard much about that in today's NFL. Being able to switch up with no huddle and pace is a good weapon. Well, I mean, that's why you have the 2-minute drill portion of the of practice, though, right?
Yeah, that's what it's designed for. They didn't work on any other kind of pace tempo stuff outside of that, but they did run a lot of 2-minute drills, and you kind of get your work in there. The rest of it is more working off the cards and the coordinators. So no other tempo besides those 2-minute situations.
All right, Todd Gensler, best coverage Steelers hands down. You honestly and objectively trump all the other fanboy clickbait programs across the airwaves. Thank you, Todd. He says 2 questions. After all the film Broderick Jones had on tape last year, could this last performance just be attributed to a one-off, a bad game, or is he really getting overcoached and regressing? I mean, we've had, Todd, with all due respect, Todd, we've talked a lot about Broderick Jones this past week, and Alex has got a great film room up on him as well, too. Look, as we just said in recent shows, there's a lot of technical flaws in his game right now. And if you want to put some of that on Pat Meyer, that's fine. If you want to put a lot of it on Broderick Jones, that's fine. Here's the thing, and Mike Thomas summed it up. His next tape is the tape that matters.
Yeah, it's a huge game for Jones to see how he can bounce back, and I promise you, all eyes will be on it.
Next, do you think the Steelers organization will put together some weekly packages to get Justin Fields on the field just to keep the defense honest and put one of their best athletes on the team in the field to play? Seems like Arthur Smith is brilliant as everyone says. They would draw up some packages for each game, at least him to mix things up. He does have talent, small doses. He may be more deadly. Yes, and yes. We've talked about that really from almost the day that Justin Fields showed up. You better figure out a way to get this guy on the field 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times a game.
Yeah, I know some people are against it. At least I've seen some of the media guys, but I'm all for it for the reasons that you guys said, to utilize Fields' athleticism to force defenses to game plan for it. And even if you don't run it in that particular game, if you make a defense spend a period to deal with it and you don't show it, you wasted their time, which is fantastic. Advantage Pittsburgh. So for multiple reasons, will you see it all the time? No, it'll ebb and flow. There'll be games where you use it a bunch, games where you use it not at all, games where you use it once situationally, but it should be what is it, a quiver for arrows? I don't talk about arrows and quivers, but it should be a tool in your toolbox. I'll go that route instead.
Okay, Robin Hood.
Yeah, I don't know. Someone out there can piece it together for me. You get what I'm saying.
Let's see here. Didn't know we were going to talk archery today. I would have been more prepared. Hey, guys, Ryan from North Carolina. Do you think a renovation of Heinz Acrisure Stadium could be in the works in the next 5 to 10 years? I remember Rooney briefly mentioning something about that when the negative survey results about the team facilities came out. The last game I went to in Pittsburgh had a great time, but it was fairly underwhelmed by the stadium itself. Number 2, I know Russ is going to start week 1, but who would you guys start? I feel like Fields' ability to improvise could be big given how shaky, banged up the tackles have been. We already kind of walked through number 2 already. Both Alex and I think Russ will start. Think we both feel that Russ should start week 1, and we both feel that Justin Fields should get on the field in some of these situational packages and all like that. So that was easy to knock out. What about Acrisure and renovations?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Art Rooney seems to be pretty steadfast in not wanting to build a new stadium. I believe Pittsburgh's lease is up for the stadium in 2030. And so if they were going to build a new stadium, then they're going to have to basically get started on that here pretty soon. does not seem to be the team's intent. They do renovations each year. They do upgrades. They always send out that packet each summer about they've upgraded the bathrooms and the new concessions and whatever. So I've added seats over time. So they'll probably continue to renovate and upgrade.
All right. From Michael Wu writes in, how about the McLuminas for the training camp awards name?
I like it sentimentally, but I think most people wouldn't understand what that means at this point with how far gone the McLumina is. So still workshopping the name, but all good suggestions.
All right. I think I got through all of them. Thank you, everybody, for the emails. We hope everybody enjoys the game and our coverage on Saturday. A lot of articles going up on Steelers Depot today, helping preview players to watch and all the stuff that goes along with that. I think we got it all. Alex, anything else to add before I get us out of here in 90 minutes today?
Nope. Come back on Monday, a lot to discuss, and then cut downs Tuesday. So buckle up. Going to be a busy couple of days.
All right. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex Kozora at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. If you're listening to this on YouTube, what did the kids say, Alex? Like and subscribe. I think
smash that like button.
Smash that like button, as the kids say. If you listen to this on a podcast machine, leave us some reviews on Apple or Spotify or whatever. If you want to make fun of my stuttering and doing all that, that's fine too. A lot of people do that. I don't have an issue with that. It's been a while since we've kind of solicited reviews on podcast platforms. So if you got a few minutes, please do that. And with that, we'll be back on Monday. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.